So a few days ago, Frederick actually posted a really interesting question on Twitter, which caught my eye. And that question was more or less, how do you warn a friend that has just started dating someone that exhibits toxic or narcissistic behavior? So Fred, where did this question come from? It's always been something that I wanted to talk about. I think it would be very interesting to people. Where did this question come from?
Yeah, it simply came from a conversation with a friend who just asked me the question, saying, I know you know about these toxic people. I'm worried about a friend of mine. It's just that I'm really worried. The backstory is this person hadn't had many relationships because of his sexual orientation that he finally got to understand and accept. Started dating someone. So everyone was really happy, saying, hey, great, you swing whatever way you want to swing, you date whoever you want to date, as long as you're happy, as long as they're good people, it's fantastic. And they started seeing, well, changes in behavior. Normally they'd be doing things together, and all of a sudden he had to ask permission from his partner. All of a sudden he wasn't sure if they could see things, saying, well, my partner isn't available, so I'm not going to come because otherwise my partner will be upset. And, I have to, because my partner is, there'd be all this rationalization, is not sure about this, is a bit insecure, and I want to include my partner, and otherwise, and all of those things. Always justifications for a toxic outcome. And she was just saying, I might be wrong with this, it might be fine, but on the off chance, how do I even approach it? I don't want to seem like I'm not supportive. I don't want to lose my friend. I don't want to let my friend, be eaten alive by a lunatic. I don't know how to do this. So what do you recommend? So we had a long chat about some of the ideas I have, things to do, things not to do, how to approach it. And I thought, this is interesting. Let's see what Twitter has to say. And I've been amazed at how generous people have been. A lot of good ideas, a lot of ideas where I see why they seem like good ideas, and I can see how they would backfire, or they're likely to backfire. And it's a great conversation to have, because we want to help people. Not everyone wants to be helped. If we don't do anything, we can feel bad about it. If we do it the wrong way, it backfires. It's really tricky. And I've myself been in situations where I'd end a relationship with someone, and it actually happened with one person, where I'd end the relationship, and a friend said, yeah, I didn't want to tell you, but when I had coffee with her, she was a bit flirty with me and I wasn't comfortable, but I didn't want to tell you. They were like, well, I
Thanks.
understand. Yeah, I understand you didn't. At the same time, I didn't know how I would have received it. I don't know if I was willing to listen to it. I might have been blinded. I might have blamed you. It was uncomfortable for everyone. So how do you navigate this thing? Because that's one of the things that make these people toxic, is they make all of the ecosystem, all of the relationships unhealthy and unpleasant. And this can sometimes lead to the person being disconnected from their friends and therefore being more vulnerable in the first place. That's a bit
Exactly.
of the backstory.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really good question. And I think a lot of people, struggle with this, with the answer. I think one has to have a very high emotional intelligence to even get into being able to help someone that has just started seeing someone for dating that has toxic or narcissistic behaviors, because you're dealing more or less, the person that is not in the relationship is not emotionally involved. So they're a lot more objective. And to talk to someone that is not objective and they are emotionally involved takes a lot of emotional intelligence. So also, as we know, the toxic person, like the narcissist and other forms of toxic personalities, they tend to start out relationships with a lot of love bombing, with a lot of self-idealizing, and also idealizing the other person, okay, making them feel privileged to be getting attention from this person. Very emotionally manipulative, and also providing a lot of material benefits, like, oh, hey, I have this spare mobile phone, you can use it. Hey, I can drive you to work, you can use my car, you can stay at
Yeah.
my house, providing the person with a lot of perks. So
Mhm.
now you come along as the friend and want to say something, and it's very difficult because they don't want to lose these benefits.
Mhm.
So can we talk about some things to not do? Meaning,
Sure.
and so you've seen, and this is the other thing that my wife said, like, what about if you've seen some red flags, but maybe the other person that's dating this toxic person hasn't seen these red flags yet? Okay, so just say you see the person that they're dating, go into a you know, they go into a brothel or something, or you see them acting a certain way, or you see them doing something with your eyes, and it's like, wow, I don't think the person that my friend that's dating this person knows that they're doing this. So you've seen something, and your friend hasn't. So can we talk about some things, start off like to not do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one assumption to not make is that people want to know the truth. Because if people want to be self-delusional and you're bursting the bubble, you're becoming the target, you're becoming the enemy, because their goal is to believe the lie and you become the obstacle. So you need to be in a situation where you're establishing what is their goal. And in this case, it's about taking a step back. Like, people often will be jumping in and saying, listen, your partner, your new partner is a lunatic. You should leave them. So this is, you know, the conclusion that's way down the road. It might be the right conclusion, but you don't know that. So taking a step back and saying, for example, if I noticed anything that made me uncomfortable, what would you like me to do? And just ask that question. And they might say, I'd like you to tell me. Then ask a why question. Why would you want me to tell you? And then you have to come up with, Chris Voss talks about the accusation audit, all the reasons why they wouldn't. You say, listen, if I tell you, it might be uncomfortable. It could be that it's nothing, and then you're reassured. It could be that it's something, but if it is something, you might be in a tough situation where you might have to give up on a dream. And we know that it's difficult to do that. The person is providing you with a lot of, you know, perks, and you list all the upside. How would you know that you're willing to even consider that it's not worth what you're getting into? Because there's always an upside and downside all the time. So we focused on the upside. We think, this is one way to frame it. Situation A is you stay with them. Situation B, you leave. Situation A, you have advantages and disadvantages. In situation B, you lose the advantages of situation A, but in situation B, you don't know what the advantages are. Of course, we know that the disadvantages of situation A are that it's a lie, it's not sustainable, we lose respect, it's bad for our health, we go completely crazy, and it costs years of our life. But then people, as we're addicted to hopium, we can hope that it's all going to work out, if only. But as soon as we lose the critical mindset, we lose ownership of our life. We basically delegate that to someone else. So if people are willing to engage in the possibility of going, well, in case it is a lie, I would want to know, however painful, then we can start talking. But we need to address that before we engage. And they need to be convincing. So if they say, of course I want you to tell me, really? So if your partner was cheating on you and you found out, would you really want to know? And not everyone, if people are honest with themselves, not everyone would say yes. They might say, well, technically yes, but I'm afraid of the pain. You can ask it, how would you deal with the pain? How would you deal with the disappointment? How would you find someone else? These are all the legitimate fears that people have. And yeah, I think it's something that misses quite a bit, is, at least from what I see, is people finding let's say, weighing the pros and cons in a way that really resonates with people, where they say, I feel understood. Yes, it's scary. How do I know I'll find someone else? And what I have, it might be the best I can get. I don't know if I deserve anyone else. And maybe the problem is me, especially if the other person is saying, all of the fight is because you've got insecurities. Maybe, but when it's so black or white, you know, it's 100% my responsibility, that itself is a toxic mindset. And so I think to get into it, we need to start asking permission to engage, asking why they'd even want us to engage, and challenge that. If they push back convincingly, we can talk. If they're not convincing, we can just say, listen, something along the lines of, listen, I really care about you. I don't feel comfortable talking to you about this. You say you want to do it. I don't feel comfortable yet. I might have seen things, it might be nothing. Right now, I don't even feel comfortable telling you because I don't feel like you'd accept it. So I'm not going to hang around, and this is one of the tough things. I don't feel comfortable hanging around and lying to you because I have seen things. I don't know what to make of it, but I don't feel comfortable. So I don't feel comfortable hanging around and not talking to you about it. I don't feel comfortable talking to you about it. So The day you want me to just tell you what I've seen and we can think about it together, I'm happy to engage. And until then, I don't feel like I'm doing you a favor by either of the two outcomes you offer. You know, they might say, well, let's try. There's a good thing there is if they say, you can tell me about it, and we say, we don't feel comfortable, and they suddenly get defensive, you say, well, listen, I see I'm making you defensive. This is exactly why I'm not comfortable. So we bring it back to our own feeling of not being comfortable, as opposed to judging someone else. And it can also be, because in this case, there was one of the behaviors was this person was bragging about other people texting them in flirty ways. So the friend was saying, you know, to me, it's strange when you start a relationship that you'd be having flirty messages going around and that you'd be telling the friend of the person about it. So it could just be a strategy to push people away. So was one of the suggestions was saying, he said things to me that make me uncomfortable. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe you don't know about it, maybe you do know about it, but I'm not comfortable. No one can argue about whether I'm comfortable or not. Whatever it might be. If I'm not comfortable, then it's my right. That's just me describing how I feel. And then we can either talk about it or people try to shut us down. That's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, that's really good. So 3 really important points that I heard there that, I just want to reflect is, first of all, to prepare the other person for the conversation before just launching straight into it.
Yeah, and get authorization, get agreement to, so ask the question, can we do it? Validate why. Exactly.
Yes. And then the second thing was to be emotionally available to them and be emotionally validating to the other person, like be understanding that, emotionally it's going to be hard to hear and internalize the information that you're presenting them with, to be emotionally understanding. And the third thing that I think was like a really good key point was to state your intention as the messenger, right? Because like you said, the first thing the person's going to want to do when you present them with this information is to kind of to try and shoot you down in order to save their, this little oasis relationship that they're starting in, that they probably feel great, or these benefits. So you coming along and saying, look, my intention in this, even though it's very uncomfortable for me, is to help you because I care about you. And I've seen things that I feel that that you should know about, right? For your own emotional well-being in this relationship. So stating your intention is, I think it's a very good key point that you brought up, because it doesn't give room for the other person to start assuming that, well, you're just jealous because I just started a new relationship and you're still single. Mm-hmm. Or you're just jealous that, I'm dating this, this movie star or this lawyer who just gave me a car and you don't have a car. So therefore you just want me to stop seeing them. So you're coming along with bad news basically, right? Whereas if you state your intention, you're making it very clear that, look, this is only because I've seen things and I feel concerned. I want you to know this information because you're a friend. I care about you. And it's getting your intention very clear and out in the open. I think that was a very good key point that you brought up.
Yeah, I think it's important to separate the conclusions that we get to with the data that we see and how we interpret it. And if we break that down, if people say, you're doing that because, then first of all, it's a very different conversation. Like, you think you're just jealous because I'm dating this movie star and, you're single. Going, well, we need a very different conversation there. If that is how you perceive my psychology, if that is how you perceive my intentions and my modus operandi, then we need a different conversation about friendship and how we are and jealousy and so on. Because I feel happy for you. I want you to be happy, happy and in good health and get all the movie stars you want, or get the right, whatever it might be. I want you to be as happy as possible because you're my friend. Now, I've seen data. I can share it with you. I can keep it to myself. I'm concerned if I share it with you that this will happen. If I don't tell you about it, I'm lying to you. This is actually quite important. It is, lying through, or just by not saying something. In the same way, the different ways to lie. If I tell you I'm an astronaut, I'm telling you openly a lie. If I know you believe I'm an astronaut, but I don't correct you, I'm also lying to you because I'm not addressing the elephant in the room. So if you have a conversation with somebody's partner and they're saying stuff that makes you uncomfortable, and then you're not relaying the discomfort, you're lying to them because they don't think you're being uncomfortable or you're feeling uncomfortable. So That's important, is to understand, does the person want relationships with people who lie to them? Loads of people do. It's pretty much the norm. Don't shatter my bubble, leave me in my comfort zone, I don't want to know the truth. You just need to ask that. Then it's up to us. Do we want to be in relationships with people who want us to lie to them? If we do, we have a specific kind of life that is being polluted by this modus operandi. And the other one is saying, I have the data, I don't know how to interpret it. You saw the person go into a brothel. It's like, well, multiple reasons. You're going in there to have intercourse with someone, or, for instance, you're a healer that is going in because somebody has a problem and you're going to help them. It's bizarre, but women who work in brothels also deserve consideration. And, then it's about, do you trust the person? How do they explain it? Do you know about it? Logically, if you go and operate in a brothel, you'll be saying, I got this bizarre call. Somebody called me into there. This is how I think of doing it. There's no secret, nothing surprising. But if the person says, I'm in a meeting with my lawyer, unless the lawyer's in the brothel, but then why would you have a meeting with a lawyer in a brothel? That makes no sense.
Very strange.
It's about how plausible the explanations are. And sometimes if they're too implausible, just, scratching below the surface. I had a few of those very implausible ones. And you trust the person, but, sometimes you go, well, that's a little bit over the top. Then you realize it's just a bunch of lies. So it's
exactly.
Tricky. Yeah.
Exactly. So some key points that I heard there that are really good was that, to actually share data and not to give the person, your opinion of their new partner. So I thought that was like a really good point that you just mentioned, that to actually give real observable information and to not say, oh, I think your new partner's a bit strange, right? Because that's an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, look, I saw them go into a brothel and I don't know what to make of it, that is something that you've actually observed, right? That is a real life event. It's not your personal opinion.
Yes.
And
I just jump in there quickly with that one. When we make observations, you can make the neutral observation and you can provide an interpretation. When you provide the worst possible interpretation, people probably will try to counterbalance it with another one. If you provide a very charitable interpretation, people might put on their, I'm not going to be an idiot hat and start thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. Providing charitable interpretations is very powerful. First of all, it doesn't make us look bad, as opposed to, I will impose my point of view on you. It's simply saying, let's take this example of the person who talks about the people flirting. It could be a bunch of things. It could be he's actually complaining about it, saying it's really uncomfortable, I started a relationship. It could be somebody who's just insecure and they're sort of weeding out of the I need a lot of attention phase. If we provide the charitable interpretations, we allow people to counterbalance with the, wait a minute, let me think about this critically, as opposed to, you're just attacking and I'm getting defensive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. In fact, I was just going to say, as the other key point that you mentioned, is to give the information without passing a negative judgment on the person.
Yep.
Leave it for your friend to come to their own critical thoughts and their own suspicion, or their own conclusions, or even just, you can say it in a very neutral way and say, look, I'm not judging what the person was doing, but it's something that I observed and I'm just letting you know that so you can look into it.
As I think it's also important to say, I don't know what to make of it. I've got no idea. I don't have the data. I don't have the context. I observe this. I don't know what it is. You go into the brothel, maybe you're a human rights lawyer trying to help women get out of there. But maybe you're feeling a bit horny and that's part of your modus operandi, in which case it's a little bit different. And maybe you're a dodgy human rights lawyer who's getting payment in kind. So I don't know. It's not really any of my business. You're the one. It's your business. But I don't feel comfortable lying to you and keeping it to myself. It's a heavy burden to carry on my shoulders. I didn't ask for this burden. Like my friend, when she was talking with this person, she didn't ask to know that he was getting flirty messages from other people. She didn't want to know it, but now she knows it. It's her burden. Like, it's not your burden to carry. Now it's there. Well, just don't keep it on your own shoulders.
Exactly. And if your friend decides to bring it up with their new partner that you've given the information about, they will tell a lot from how their new partner actually responds to, you know, the attempts to gain more about what happened. If obviously if they get defensive or if they become toxic, then, you know, that's certainly going to alarm the person further that, okay, so maybe you weren't just going into the brothel to use the restroom, right? Maybe,
Yeah.
you know, because why are you so defensive if you just needed to relieve yourself, right? I mean, you know, when it's not a crime to walk into a building to use the amenities if you have to go. So that's going to say a lot also for them to make their own inquiries, and they see how their new partner responds is going to say a lot more than you trying to make them suspicious and think negatively about something that you really don't have any proof of anyway. You only saw them go in or something like that.
Exactly. And, you know, assuming that people generally don't want to hear the bad news, trying to push the bad news onto them doesn't usually work. So that's another thing, is when we observe the person gets defensive, it's about body language, it's about micro expressions, or the person is pushing back, label it. It's really important. It seems that you're feeling this way, which I understand. And always, most charitable explanation, instead of pointing fingers, you don't want to know the truth. Like, it would be more like labeling that I can see this isn't comfortable, I'm not sure how to present it to you. And then taking a step back, you're getting defensive, I understand it. You know, or it seems, actually not you're getting defensive, it seems like you're getting defensive. You go, no, I'm not. It's like, well, I'm sure this isn't comfortable for you. They're not going to say, yes, it's very comfortable. No, it isn't comfortable.
Yeah, it's very validating.
One way is simply describe how they say it. So they say, that's right, instead of you're right. It seems to me that. They might say you're wrong. Fine. Happy for you to correct me. Everything I'm doing is out of concern for you, your well-being, having a conversation, not losing a friendship, not being a bad friend. But if I'm put in an uncomfortable situation because of someone else, this will create a gap between us unless we talk about it. I'm not willing to lose a friend unless unless it's your choice. Then I respect your choice, I regret your choice, but I'm going to do what it takes to be a good friend to you. But I'm not sure how to do it. You know, like, are you willing to help me?
Yeah, so get them involved and, you know, ask for, you know, consent, prepare them. This is very important key points in approaching this very uncomfortable and difficult conversation. Let's finish off with how a person should deal with if their friend or the family member, right, that's just started seeing this new person that is exhibiting toxic or narcissistic behaviors. Just say they outright reject the attempt of, you know, being informed about what you've seen. They don't have anything to do with it. How should a person approach someone that is just not in any way open or, you know, listening to what you have to say? Let's talk briefly about how to approach that. The person that just doesn't want to hear, no matter what you try, you try being validating, you try being, you know, using the charitable approach, right? Giving them just the information in a charitable and kind of with a positive connotation. Just say the person is completely dismissive. How does one approach someone that just doesn't want to be helped?
I think the best way is reverse psychology. Just say, shrug it off. You're probably right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, how bad could it possibly be? I'm probably just making it up. Yeah, you're right. You know, it's true. I'm a bit jealous of you. I mean, you know, look, you're dating this amazing person. It's true. I'm still single. Of course, I'd love to be in your shoes. Yeah, I'm probably exaggerating it. After all, what could it be? You ask the kind of what question to raise a thing. And then saying, you know, I feel good that I was able to talk to you about it. That's great. I really appreciate it. I feel much better. I feel much better. I told you about it. We established that it's absolutely nothing. You know, we know I didn't lie about it, but you're right. Nothing to be concerned about. There probably isn't anything else to be concerned about at all. And then you can throw in something like, you know, so this is when they've shut down the communication, because otherwise you could start talking about changes in their behavior and asking if it works for them. Let's say they've shut down the communication. You can say, well, you know, because there's nothing to be worried about, there is probably no downside for me just to share with you a list of toxic behaviors to keep your eyes open, because there's no risk that any of this is going to apply anyway, so there's no danger if I share it with you. And then, you know, in the absolutely unlikely event that any of this remotely has any kind of validity, then this might be a way to deal with it. And you might also want to frame it as saying like, you've got 4 situations of toxicity. You've got people who are seldom a little bit toxic, that's most people. People who are always a bit toxic. People who are seldom extremely toxic, and people who are always extremely toxic. So if you frame it this way, you say, you know, every relationship has got some level of toxicity. It's perfectly normal. It seems yours has none, which is mind-blowing. Like, I haven't heard about that before. Yours has none. On the off chance anything comes up, having this list helps you nip it in the bud and keep it super healthy. So would it be a stupid idea for me to share the list with you? Framed that way, it's not a threat. And if they say no, then, you know, you can go, well, you know, you can sort of ask why, but that sort of creates a bit of cognitive dissonance, because if it's a non-threat, and you just say, in the potential, anything happens in the future, which is perfectly normal, this helps you keep things healthy, then it's easier for them to accept it. And if you have a list simply of symptoms, I did one of those on my website. If you have a list of symptoms, it's easier to go, this behavior isn't healthy. And sometimes people go through the list and they think, I'm in a good relationship, and they suddenly go, wait a minute, like 15 of these 25 behaviors are there on a pretty constant level. And these are the sources of all of the problems. And when I try to talk about it with my partner, the partner rejects any conversation, which itself is toxic. And I feel responsible for 100% of what's going on. Wait, is what's happening here? That's one way to provide a bit of objectivity. But I think stop pushing if they don't want it. Pull the other way. You're right, probably nothing. Perhaps I feel better. And also, because it's nothing, if I see anything else, I gather it's going to be fine for me to talk about it with you, because we just established that there's nothing wrong. So it's probably just me, just for my own peace of mind. Would it be okay if we did it? Because I know the conclusion is going to be, you reassure me. But if we don't have that conversation, I will feel worried. So they sort of catch themselves. If they go, there's nothing toxic, then it's fine to talk about everything. So that's one way to play around with it. I think main thing, stop pushing. Just go, yeah, you're probably right, and dismiss it. Sometimes when we do that, people suddenly get a bit worried. It's a bit like the, if you're on an airplane and the captain says, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry, the left wing is not on fire. Everyone starts panicking. Right? Why is he saying that? So I can suddenly start asking questions. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good approach. The reverse psychology approach, I think, is very important, and not to push. I really like the idea also that you mentioned about, you know, providing them with a list of toxic behaviors, because one of the things that toxic people and narcissistic people aim to achieve by emotionally manipulating their new partner is to basically take their focus away from these 10, 15, 20 toxic behaviors that are happening on a regular basis. And then when you put that, you know, you give them access to that list and they look at it, they suddenly have that epiphany, like, oh, wow, you're right. It's like, I didn't realize how toxic this relationship was. And another question also that I have found that works extremely well with people that are in toxic relationships and are getting a significant amount of benefit, financial or other material benefits, is to simply ask them, you know, hey, this new relationship is looks like it's going great. How's the emotional connection in the relationship, right? Because toxic people and narcissistic people, as we all know, don't do emotional connection very well at all, right? So they might listen to someone's feelings and in their head just be saying, how dare you have feelings? But they don't do emotional connection and emotional intimacy very well at all, right? So if you were to ask your friend, how is this person with your emotions? Do they make an effort to try and understand what you're feeling on a regular basis? Do they validate what you're feeling? All of a sudden they're like, wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I can't remember that's happened yet, because the toxic person and the narcissistic person are not able to do that because they're not doing it for themselves, because they're toxic. So
yeah,
I have this all the time when people come to me and we just start off in the sessions. They're very confused about what's going on. Is it me? Is it them? Why is this relationship going so bad? Why do I feel like it's my fault? Just this one question. How was your partner?
Mhm.
How do they do in making an effort to understand what your feelings are and validating what you're feeling, trying to provide empathy for your emotions? How do they do with that? Yeah, I've been with the person 12 years. I can't remember them ever doing that. This is a very, yes, this is a very big eye opener for people. It's like, okay, so you have no emotional connection in your relationship. Really, the main purpose of a relationship, especially an intimate one, and even with your friends, is to actually emotionally support and understand each other, because human beings are emotional beings. So if your new partner is not making an effort to understand what you're feeling and to validate your emotions, what's the point of the relationship?
Yes, that's a good point. How would you feel, by the way, question for you, if you, instead of asking the question, how are they making an effort to validate your feelings, you make an observation, which is simply saying, it seems like they're making an effort to validate. So it's an observation you expect them to reject, a hypothesis you expect them to reject because it's wrong. And, so it's like, it's a false labeling. You're labeling something that is not true, make it easier for them to go, no, wait a minute, that's not quite right. And that sort of opens a door to a potential way of doing it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Because again, it's a charitable approach. You're giving the person, you're approaching it from a positive. So then you're leaving it up to the other person to come to the negative themselves. I do like that. I do like that approach. So yeah, that would be definitely a good way to do it. I think that's a really good point. So you're saying to, instead of just asking the question as a neutral, right, and expecting them to kind of, to say, no, actually, they're not doing that, to actually say, look, I'm sure this person is really validating and understanding towards you. Like, how are you finding it? And let the person realize, oh, actually, you know what? No, you're wrong. They're not doing that. Oh, you've proved me wrong, rather than you trying to prove them wrong. Yeah, I like that. I think it will encourage a lot less defensiveness.
I think it seems to work rather nicely when you make an assumption that's wrong. We dislike wrong assumptions because it feels like we're not being understood. So if you make a wrong assumption, which sounds very positive, they can either embrace it or they can push back. And if the pushback comes from them, it's much more powerful because it's also more validating because they're validating it themselves. And they're going, wait, that doesn't feel right. So we try to, paint a portrait that's wrong that they can reject rather than go, the portrait you're painting, we don't like to admit when we're wrong. So if we paint a portrait that's beautiful and someone says, I don't think it's quite right, we'd be defensive of our portrait. Whereas if someone says, this is the perfect portrait, that's how you are, I go, that's not quite right either. It's a bit weird. It's, again, a bit of reverse psychology, but I think it can work quite nicely.
Yeah, I think it is important when when you're approaching someone that does stand to maybe be a little bit embarrassed or defensive, to use a lot of this reverse psychology to make it easier for the person to to come to their own self-realizations.
I think it's really important, and I think that's one of the things where we see a huge difference between professionals and friends, is the friends will happily offer their conclusion and then talk about it, and the professionals know when to step back and allow the person to walk along the path and reach their own conclusions. And it's a bit of a combination between here are tools, here are images, and then let the people take it, integrate it, and move forward to avoid repeating the same mistakes. And it works better when it comes from people, trusting they'll get wherever they need to get. And instead of forcing an outcome of, you should leave this person because they're a moron, to just go, well, as long as it's working for you, as long as the situation is balanced, you're okay. Trying to raise a few red flags so you understand what you're getting into. And you can make your own decision. But basically, you can make more informed decisions as opposed to, I could provide information to you, but I do it the wrong way, or I withhold it, and I let you make bad decisions, and I'm not playing my role as a friend.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like that point. Is it also about leaving them to make the decision? Because even if what you're telling them to do is the best advice in the world, right? You are 100% right in what you've seen and what they should do. it's not normally, you're right, it's not normally received well in telling people what to do. Adults shouldn't tell other adults what to do. So making that very clear in the conversation that, hey, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you to leave the person or to stay. I'm just presenting this information and I'm just here to support you 100%.
Yeah.
What you decide to do is totally up to you. That's in your sphere. And I'm only here as a supportive friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I'm here for. Yeah.
That's it. I present the information. I don't even know how to interpret it. Your choice. You want to do whatever. You have my support as a friend. Just don't ask me to lie to you. That's all I'm asking. Don't ask me to lie. You'll have my support. You know, that's fine. You make your own decisions. And it's something, you know, I see a lot as well-meaning people who say, this is the outcome, do it. You sometimes get people saying, you know, on Twitter, I'm in a situation, what should I do? And people say, run, just get away. It's well-intentioned. But part of the problem is people finding themselves in the child position, assuming there's a parental authority that has got all the answers. So whether it's the narcissist, whether it's us, whether it's politicians, movie stars, whoever it might be, who's saying, do X because I tell you and I have the authority, this is creating the kind of system where narcissists will show up and abuse people because others delegate the responsibility to the parental figure. Whereas what we want to do is keep people on adult mode, is take responsibility for your life. You're the one with the skin in the game. You want to date a narcissist, knock yourself out. You want to put your hand on a burning frying pan, just knock yourself out. It's your pain. I regret it. It's your choice. You're not going to suck me into it. And it can help break part of the game of, I delegate to others, I'm a victim, it's somebody else's responsibility, and I'm getting all the sympathy that a child would get. So one point is like, that's just a very toxic game. You need to break out and take responsibility for whatever part of it you can work on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, to give the person, you know, to leave them with their, you know, with their self-responsibility and give them empowerment rather than to parent them and to make decisions for them and, you know, treat them like a child, basically. That's a very good point.
That's really important. I see huge turnarounds where people can take responsibility of their life. I mean, you know, I think we all went through it. At one point, we just said, enough is enough. I'm fed up of being fed up. I'm fed up of waiting. It's time for me to do something. I don't know what to do, don't know how to do it. It's terrifying, but I need to take responsibility for my life because I'm the one with skin in the game in my life. And all the well-meaning people who say you should do X, Y, Z, I don't doubt their intentions. But the outcome is not improving the situation. It's not empowering people.
Very true. And I think you've also touched on the key point of, if you try to help your friend or your family member that has just started a relationship with a toxic person or a narcissistic person, and the conversation doesn't go well, they're not receptive, the conversation was a failure, to just basically to tell yourself that I attempted to be supportive and to provide information out of care and love for the person. They have their own responsibility for themselves. They are an adult. They're a responsible adult. It's not my responsibility. If whatever situation they're in, it's theirs. I tried, and to leave it at that, and to not basically lose sleep at night, and to remain there as a supportive friend, but to not take on the responsibility of, I have to save this person from what I've seen.
That's really important.
That's a very important point.
It's remembering, you know, remember my psychotherapist was telling me when I found out that someone I knew started dating one of the toxic people I knew, and the guy was a thief and a swindler and dishonest. And I was asking, what can I do? And she said, you know, from our point of view, unless there's a threat of death or severe physical danger, people need to learn from their experiences. So, well, I did what I could of sending information about toxic people. That's actually how I ended up writing this whole blog about the red flags. Or somebody else knew her. I wanted to provide her the information in a way where she didn't know where it was coming from, but she had the red flags. And at the end of the day, it's about life experiences. People will be okay. You know, you go through a toxic relationship, you're still alive at the end, you're probably stronger. Yes, it was really unpleasant, but we cleared out a lot of dirt we had. So if people need that, great. You know, they'll be okay. They'll have the support when they need it. And sometimes friends come back together again afterwards of saying, you know, you tried to warn me, I should have listened, I wasn't ready. Then it's fine, forgive them. They paid a heavy price. And
yes.
That's saying, that frying pan seems really hot. If I were you, I wouldn't put my hand on it. And if they go, nah, it's going to be fine. At one point, you know, give them a bandage and help them, heal, and just they're paying the price.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? And let's finish with this. That key point that you made is like so good and so important, that if they reject your attempts at providing information to them and being supportive to them by letting them know what you know or what you've seen, to not let your ego say, well, you know what? The heck with this person. I'm done with it. I tried to help them. They rejected me. I'm not their friend anymore. I'm not going to help them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously, a very egoistic approach. And I love that point that you said, that, even if they reject you flat out, okay, and they don't listen to anything that you say, it could be that you got them at the wrong time. It could be that maybe they're stressed about their rent that they can't pay, and now you're trying to bring them up about, telling them some difficult information. Don't cut them off. Don't be hurt. Don't let your ego get wounded, because tomorrow they might say, look, yesterday you told me some information and I wasn't really ready to hear it. Can we chat about that again? What did you see again? And it could be that they need you in a few days time, a few weeks time, a few months time, even a few years time. Don't disappear from this person just because they rejected your attempts to help, because it doesn't mean that you have to cut and run from this person. And I think that was a very good point that you made, that an unconditional friend or a family member that's supportive should always be there no matter what the other person's going through. And if they chose not to listen at a particular time and they come back later and say, look, it's been 2 months since you told me that, and it's actually gotten worse, and you were actually bringing up some good points that I didn't listen to at the time. Obviously you shouldn't say, see, I was right. You didn't listen to me, blah, 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 blah. No, you should just say, okay, so I'm still here as a friend. What can I help you with now? How can I support you? Okay, even though they didn't listen to you last time, that's not a reason to become despondent now and to stop helping them. No, you're still there as a friend, and you can still support them even if they didn't listen to you initially.
Yes, I think it's really important to respect people's choices. We can still love them in the absolute. It doesn't mean we're willing to play along. If they ask us to play a toxic game of, let's pretend that you're not seeing what's evident to everyone. If it doesn't work for us, just say it. I still love you. I see that right now your conditions of our friendship don't work for me. Which I regret, but I respect it. If ever it changes, I'd be happy to be back in touch. Right now, it doesn't seem like it's what you want or what you need. I wish you all the best, and the door is always open. Just don't ask me to lie to you, because that's costing me something, and I'm not willing to pay that cost. If I see something, I'd like to be able to talk to you about it. If you're not willing for me to do that, these terms and conditions don't work for me. But I respect that it works for you for now. If ever it changes, happy to talk. Sometimes people might say, well, let's not talk about the relationship. And then that's one way of approaching it, is saying, we could not talk about the relationship, but I will talk about what I see in you, micro expressions. And if I see you look that, are you asking me to ignore that and pretend everything is fine? That's like saying, if I see you with a broken leg and you're limping along, do you expect me to ignore the broken leg? Or should I say, maybe get yourself to a doctor, like maybe urgently? I'm not willing to play along with a broken leg. I'm not willing to play along with a broken soul. So if you don't want that information, don't hang out with me, because I'll tell the truth, as uncomfortable as it might be for me. Makes me think, one quick point, maybe we should do a video about this another time, is micro expressions show the emotions we feel. So if you ask someone to talk about their relationship and you film it in slow motion, as we can do with modern phones, you see the expression. And if someone is happy, you'll see it. If someone is angry or sad or feels despair, you'll see it. I tried on myself, I tried with other people. It's terrifying how accurate it is. And I remember filming someone who was saying he was really happy, and at one point he lifted his head up and there was that kind of image in slow motion. And it was there, he couldn't deny it. It's like, listen, you just broke your leg, you broke up with your girlfriend, you lost your job, and you're running out of cash. You're really telling me things are okay? Seriously?
Yeah.
That's not credible. And this also is really important, by the way. If you see the other person is showing contempt or disgust, the relationship is over. And a lot of narcissists have pretty much constantly a smirk of contempt on their face. When you make people aware of this, like contempt, disgust when they talk to you, that's no longer a healthier relationship. That's part of the education which is simply, in this case, just scientific, nothing to do with them. Everyone should know about it. Contempt or disgust, the relationship is over pretty soon unless you do something about it very, very quickly. There's no arguing about that. But that's probably subject to another video. We can get into details.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. You've actually mentioned 2 other good video ideas there. So I want to thank you for chatting with me about this interesting question today. We certainly got to some very helpful information that hopefully a lot of people will benefit from. Once again, I'm going to put all Frederick's details in the description to this video. I highly recommend that you go and check out Frederick's content. It's gold. I look at it every day and I'm always enriched by it. Frederick, thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to chatting you again in the next video.
With great pleasure. Thank you for having me again, Josh. Speak soon.
All right. Be well.